Before there were restaurants, before there were cookbooks, before there was a word for cuisine, there were kitchens. Not the kitchens we imagine when we use that word. Outdoor fire pits with clay pots. Wooden mortars carved from tree trunks and pestles worn smooth by generations of hands. Iron pots traded across the Sahara. Calabashes sealed with shea butter for storage. The earthen ovens and three-stone fires of villages from Senegal to Nigeria, from Mali to Cameroon, from Guinea to Ghana. The kitchens where West African food was made every day for thousands of years, by people who understood that food was not merely nourishment, but medicine, ceremony, community, and the most direct expression of a people's relationship with the land they lived on. This food kept people alive through drought and conflict, through the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and its aftermath, through colonialism and its disruptions, through every pressure that history placed on the communities that made it. And it did more than keep people alive. It traveled. The women who were enslaved and taken across the Atlantic carried in their memories, and in their hands the knowledge of this food. And that knowledge transformed the cuisine of the Americas, producing Creole cooking and Brazilian maquica and Caribbean rice and peas, and the entire tradition of Southern American cooking that the world now recognizes without always knowing where it came from. These are 25 of those dishes, not the restaurant versions, the ancestral versions, the ones made from the ingredients that were available in West African villages across centuries, prepared with the techniques that made those ingredients produce the maximum nutrition, the maximum flavor, and the maximum resilience for families who needed all three. The first dish is egusi soup, which is one of the most widely eaten dishes across West Africa, from Nigeria to Ghana to Sierra Leone to Cameroon, with regional variations in every country and every household. Egusi are the seeds of a melon gourd, dried and ground to a coarse flour that is extraordinarily protein-rich, approximately 50% protein by dry weight, and high in healthy fats. The ground seeds are fried in palm oil until they set into a crumbly texture, then cooked in a broth with leafy greens, typically bitter leaf, uga leaf, or spinach depending on region, with stockfish, smoked fish, crayfish, and whatever fresh protein is available. The dish feeds a large family from a relatively small amount of protein because the egusi itself contributes substantial nutrition. The flavor is deep and specific, somewhere between nutty and savory, inseparable from the palm oil that carries it. The second dish is jollof rice, which requires no introduction to anyone from West Africa or the diaspora, and which requires significant context for everyone else. Jollof rice is rice cooked in a tomato-based sauce with onions, peppers, and spices until the rice has absorbed all the liquid and taken on the deep red-orange color and a specific smoky flavor, the party jollof flavor, that the bottom of the pot produces when the fire is right and the cook knows when to reduce the heat. Every country in West Africa has a version. Nigeria's is saucier and smokier. Ghana's is firmer and more fragrant. Senegal's thibaudien is the probable ancestor of them all. The dish is fundamentally democratic. It uses rice, which is cheap, and extends it with aromatics and a small amount of protein into a complete meal that tastes far more expensive than it is. The third dish is egusi stew with fufu, because fufu deserves its own discussion and its own place in this list. Fufu is the starchy accompaniment that appears across West and Central Africa in various forms. Pounded yam in Nigeria, cassava fufu in much of Central and West Africa, banku in Ghana, ugali in East Africa. The principle is the same everywhere. A starchy vegetable boiled and pounded until smooth, elastic, and cohesive, formed into balls or mounds, and eaten by pulling off a small piece, forming it into a small cup shape in the fingers, and using it to scoop stew or soup. It is extraordinarily efficient as a food delivery system, providing carbohydrate energy in a form that is filling, easily digestible, and completely neutral in flavor, designed to carry the flavor of the stew rather than compete with it. Pounding fufu in a mortar is one of the most demanding physical tasks in West African cooking. The two-person rhythm of the pestle and the mortar producing the specific rhythmic sound that was the kitchen's most recognizable voice. The fourth dish is groundnut soup, called peanut soup in English translations, which appears in some form across the entire West African cooking tradition and which represents one of the most important nutritional contributions of the groundnut to the region's food security. Groundnuts were brought to West Africa from South America by Portuguese traders in the 16th century and were adopted with such speed and thoroughness that they now seem as native to the region as any indigenous crop. The soup is made by roasting and grinding groundnuts to a paste, which is then dissolved in hot water or stock, cooked with tomatoes, onions, peppers, and protein, beef, fish, or whatever is available, into a rich, thick, nutty soup that provides both protein and fat in quantities that make it one of the most nutritionally complete single dishes in the tradition. The fifth dish is okra soup, which is distinct from the egusi soup in technique and in character. Okra cooked in water or stock releases the viscous polysaccharides that thicken the soup without any added starch or flour, producing the characteristic slippery texture that is the most misunderstood feature of West African okra cooking. The slipperiness is the point. In Yoruba medicine, slippery foods are considered beneficial for digestion, for the joints, and for the throat, and the okra soup is made specifically to achieve and preserve this texture. It is cooked with crayfish, stockfish, smoked fish, and leafy greens, seasoned with locust beans when available, and served with fufu or EBA gari, the processed cassava product, mixed with boiling water into a stiff dough. The sixth dish is bungus soup, made from the flesh and juice of the palm fruit, which is the product of the oil palm that grows throughout West and Central Africa, and that has been one of the most important food plants of the region for thousands of years. The palm fruit is boiled, the flesh pounded and squeezed to extract the rich red-orange juice, which becomes the base of the soup. The flavor of fresh palm fruit juice is complex and specific, fruity, slightly tangy, with an earthiness that palm oil alone does not provide, and the soup made from it is considered among the most traditional and most distinctly West African preparations. It is cooked with assorted meats, stockfish, crayfish, and scent leaves, and it is eaten primarily in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria and in neighboring countries. The seventh dish is black-eyed pea soup, which is one of the most ancient preparations in West African cooking and one whose descents appear most clearly in the food of the diaspora. The hop and john of the American South, the feijão da corda of Brazil, the peas and rice of the Caribbean are all descended from this tradition. Black-eyed peas, which are native to West Africa and were among the crops carried by enslaved Africans to the Americas, are cooked with smoked or salted meat, with onions and peppers, until the beans are completely soft and the cooking liquid has thickened into a broth. The dish is simple by the measure of preparation steps and rich by the measure of flavor, because the smoked meat and the beans together produce a depth of flavor that the recipe's brevity does not suggest. The eighth dish is suya, the street food of northern Nigeria and the Sahel region, which is among the most internationally recognized West African preparations and among the most technically specific. Suya is beef, typically thin cut from the round or the sirloin, threaded on a metal skewers, coated in a spice mixture called yaji that is built around ground dried groundnuts, ground ginger, paprika, garlic, and various other spices depending on the cook, and grilled over an open wood or charcoal fire until the exterior is slightly charred and the interior is just cooked through. The yaji crust is the defining element of suya. It creates a spiced, slightly sweet, nutty coating that chars at the fire's edge and that is unlike any other spice application in West African cooking. Suya is eaten hot off the skewer with sliced onions, tomatoes, and additional ground yaji for dipping. The ninth dish is palm oil rice, which is the simplest possible expression of the region's most fundamental pairing and which fed families across West Africa when other ingredients were not available. Rice cooked in water, fluffed, and allowed to dry slightly, then mixed with palm oil, onion fried in the oil, salt, and whatever protein scraps were available. The palm oil turns the rice a deep orange red and contributes fat and fat-soluble vitamins. Palm oil is one of the richest natural sources of vitamin E and contains significant amounts of vitamin A precursors. It is filling, affordable, nutritious in the specific way that fat-rich foods are nutritious for people doing physical labor, and it takes 20 minutes to make. The 10th dish is ifo riro, the Yoruba spinach stew that is one of the most loved and most carefully made dishes in Nigerian cooking. Dark leafy greens, traditionally Ifotet, African spinach, though regular spinach substitutes acceptably, cooked with palm oil, tomatoes, onions, peppers, smoked fish, crayfish, and assorted meat in a stew that is thicker and more vegetable-forward than many West African preparations. The technique for Ifo Riro involves frying the blended tomato and pepper base in palm oil until the oil separates and the mixture is no longer raw. This frying step is critical because undercooked tomato and pepper paste produces a stew with an acidic, uncooked taste that is considered a mark of insufficient cooking skill. The stew is done when the oil floats on the surface in a clear red layer, indicating that the water content of the tomatoes has been driven off and the flavors have concentrated. The 11th dish is Thaibu Dayin, the Senegalese fish and rice dish that is the probable ancestor of all West African rice dishes and that is considered the national dish of Senegal. Rice cooked in a deeply seasoned tomato and fish broth, served with whole pieces of fish and with vegetables, cabbage, carrot, cassava, eggplant, that have cooked in the same broth. The defining flavor of Thaibu Dayin is the ROF, a paste of parsley, hot pepper, garlic, and seasoning that is stuffed into incisions in the fish before cooking and that infuses the entire dish as the fish cooks. The base of the pot in Thaibu Dayin is deliberately allowed to develop a crust. The zun, which is scraped from the pot and served separately as a delicacy, crunchy and intensely flavored, the equivalent of the sacarat of Spanish paella. The 12th dish is moin moin, the steamed bean pudding that is one of the most technically precise preparations in Yoruba cooking and one of the most nutritionally complete. Black-eyed peas are soaked, the skins removed by rubbing and rinsing, then blended with onion, peppers, and seasoning into a smooth batter. The batter is mixed with palm oil and with whatever protein additions are available, cooked fish, egg, corned beef, then poured into leaf parcels or into small pots and steamed until set. The result is a firm, savory, protein-rich pudding that is complete as a meal on its own, and that is simultaneously an extremely efficient use of beans, because the grinding and steaming makes the bean protein more digestible than it would be in whole bean preparations. The 13th dish is akara, the fried bean cake that is Thaibu Dayin's cousin in the bean tradition and one of the street foods most associated with morning markets across West Africa and the diaspora. The akara de Bahia, Brazil, is its direct descendant, brought by Yoruba-speaking enslaved people and maintained with such fidelity that the dish is virtually identical in its ancestral form. The same batter as moin moin, thinned slightly with water, dropped by spoonfuls into hot palm oil, and fried until crisp and golden outside and soft inside. Eaten hot with hot sauce or with a tomato-based sauce. The protein content of akara is exceptional for a fried snack. Each piece is essentially a small bean protein cake, and the dish provided a high-energy, high-protein morning meal for people facing a full day of physical labor. The 14th dish is garden egg stew, which uses the small, white or purple egg-shaped eggplants that are native to West Africa, and that taste distinctly different from the large purple eggplants of Mediterranean cooking. Less bitter, more complex, with a slight astringency that the cooking process softens. The garden eggs are roasted directly in the fire or on a grill until the skins are charred and the flesh is soft, then peeled and roughly mashed, then cooked in palm oil with onions, peppers, tomatoes, crayfish, and smoked fish into a thick stew. The roasting step is essential. It produces a smoky depth in the garden egg flesh that cooking without prior roasting does not achieve. The 15th dish is ogbono soup, made from the ground seeds of the wild mango, which produce the same viscous thickening effect as okra and which have a distinct, slightly fermented, nutty flavor that is completely specific to this ingredient and irreplaceable by any substitute. The ground ogbono seeds are fried briefly in palm oil. Then the liquid is added and the seeds dissolve into a thick, draw soup, the West African category of soups that have this characteristic viscous, stretchy texture. Leafy greens, crayfish, stockfish, smoked fish, and meat are added, and the soup is cooked until everything is tender and the flavors have integrated. Ogbono soup is considered particularly nourishing in Igbo and Yoruba culinary medicine. eaten during recovery from illness and immediately after childbirth. The 16th dish is yam pottage, which is among the most fundamental preparations in the Nigerian and Ghanaian traditions and which demonstrates the region's approach to cooking yam as something other than a simple boiled or pounded starch. Yam cubes cooked in a tomato and palm oil sauce with smoked fish, crayfish, and leafy greens until the yam has absorbed the sauce and the exterior of each piece has taken on the orange-red color of the palm oil. Some of the yam cubes break down into the sauce, thickening it. Others remain intact, providing textural contrast. The dish is finished with leafy greens that wilt in the residual heat. It is a complete meal: carbohydrate, fat, protein, vegetables, in a single pot, and it was one of the most efficient ways to extend a small amount of protein into a full family meal. The 17th dish is ogi, the fermented porridge made from maize, sorghum, or millet that is one of the foundational foods of the West African diet and one of the most nutritionally significant. The grain is soaked in water for 2 to 3 days, during which it ferments. The fermentation is not incidental, but deliberate, because fermented grains have significantly higher nutritional availability than unfermented grains. The fermentation process breaking down phytic acid and other anti-nutrients that would otherwise limit mineral absorption. The fermented grain is ground, the pulp strained, and the liquid allowed to settle. The settled starch cooked into a smooth, slightly sour porridge. Ogi is the traditional weaning food for infants across West Africa, prescribed for the sick, eaten by pregnant and nursing women, and consumed throughout life as a breakfast food. Its sour flavor is an acquired taste by the standards of outsider palates, and a deeply comforting familiar one by the standards of anyone who grew up with it. The 18th dish is Kanamire stew, called cocoyam leaf stew, which is one of the defining dishes of Ghanaian cooking and one of the most nutritionally dense preparations in the region. Taro leaves, kanamire, are highly nutritious but contain calcium oxalate crystals that must be neutralized through cooking, specifically through prolonged boiling that breaks down the crystals and makes the leaves safe to eat. The boiled leaves are then cooked in a sauce of palm oil, onions, tomatoes, smoked fish, and groundnuts, producing a rich green stew that is eaten with fufu or with boiled plantains. The dish is eaten on significant occasions and on ordinary days, and it appears in the cooking of the Akan people with a frequency that reflects its centrality to the food culture of southern Ghana. The 19th dish is bafrat, the Ghanaian fried dough ball that is one of the street foods most associated with morning markets and with the specific kind of hunger that a long day beginning early produces. A simple yeast-leavened dough of flour, sugar, egg, and nutmeg, allowed to rise, then dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil and fried until puffed and golden, crisp outside and airy inside. The nutmeg is essential. It gives bafrat its specific identity, the warm spice note that distinguishes it from fried dough of other traditions. Eaten warm, pulled apart, the interior steaming. A bag of bafrat purchased from a market vendor for the equivalent of a few cents fed a morning. The 20th dish is beneseed soup, made from sesame seeds, called beneseed in Nigeria, which are roasted and ground to a paste and used as the primary thickening and flavoring agent of the soup. Sesame is one of the oldest cultivated crops in Africa. Its seeds extraordinarily rich in calcium, in healthy fats, and in protein, and the soup made from them is considered one of the most medicinal in the tradition. The paste is dissolved in hot water or stock, cooked with leafy greens, crayfish, smoked fish, and meat, and the result is a lighter-colored, nutty, rich soup that is distinct from the darker palm oil-based soups that dominate the tradition. It is eaten primarily in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria and in parts of Cameroon and Central African Republic. The 21st dish is EBA and soup, which deserves its own entry because EBA, gari cooked with boiling water into a stiff dough, is the most widely eaten starchy accompaniment in Nigeria and one of the most efficient foods in terms of cost, preparation time, and caloric density. Gari, the dried and fermented cassava granules, requires only the addition of boiling water and vigorous stirring to produce a firm, smooth dough that can be ready in 5 minutes. Cassava was brought to West Africa from South America, like the groundnut, by Portuguese traders and adopted with equal speed becoming within 2 centuries one of the staple crops of the region because of its resilience. Cassava grows in poor soils, tolerates drought, and can be left in the ground for extended periods without deteriorating, making it one of the most reliable food security crops available. The 22nd dish is bunga rice, which combines the palm fruit soup base of bunga soup with rice to produce a complete dish that is both the soup and the starch in one preparation. The palm fruit juice extracted from boiled and pounded fruit is used as the cooking liquid for the rice, which absorbs the flavor and color of the palm fruit as it cooks. Cooked with stockfish, smoked fish, crayfish, and scent leaves, bunga rice is a one-pot preparation that requires the labor of extracting the palm fruit juice, but produces a depth of flavor that no other preparation achieves. The 23rd dish is chin chin, the deep-fried shortbread snack that is one of the most universally recognized West African foods across the diaspora, and that represents the tradition's approach to creating shelf-stable, portable, energy-dense food for travel and for storage. A simple dough of flour, sugar, egg, butter, and nutmeg, kneaded until smooth, rolled thin, cut into small shapes, and deep-fried until golden and completely dry. The complete dehydration in the oil gives chin chin its characteristic crunch and its shelf stability. Properly made chin chin can be stored for weeks at room temperature without deteriorating. It was travel food, it was snack food, it was the food pack for long journeys and for children's school lunches. The 24th dish is asero, the Yoruba yam porridge that is the comfort food of Nigerian cooking in the way that chicken soup is the comfort food of other traditions. The dish eaten when someone is sick, when the weather is cold, when someone needs to be fed something familiar and nourishing with minimum fuss. Yam cubes boiled in water with palm oil, onion, peppers, crayfish, and smoked fish, the yam stirring into the liquid as it cooks until the pot contains something between a soup and a porridge, thick and orange and deeply satisfying. The yam provides resistant starch and potassium. The palm oil provides fat-soluble vitamins. The crayfish and smoked fish provide umami and protein. The whole pot costs almost nothing and tastes like someone who loves you made it. The 25th dish is kunu, the fermented grain drink from northern Nigeria that is not food in the solid sense, but that was, and remains, one of the most important sources of nutrition in the Sahel region, where grain drinks provided hydration, calories, and the nutritional benefits of fermentation in a form that was portable, shelf-stable for short periods, and accessible even in communities with limited food security. Millet or sorghum is ground, mixed with spices, ginger most importantly, sometimes cloves and black pepper, soaked in water, fermented briefly, the solid strained, the liquid cooked into a drink that is simultaneously refreshing, slightly spicy, and nutritious. Kunu was the drink of markets, the drink of travel, the drink given to nursing mothers for its galactagogue properties. The ginger stimulates milk production, and the drink that a hot day in the Sahel demanded. These 25 preparations are not the whole of West African cooking. They're not even the majority of it. West African cooking encompasses hundreds of distinct traditions, thousands of specific dishes, the culinary heritage of a region of over 400 million people across more than 15 countries, each with its own languages, its own agricultural traditions, its own relationship to the specific ingredients that its land provides. What these 25 share is this. They were built from what was available. They were refined across generations of daily preparation. They carry within them the nutritional knowledge of people who understood their food's relationship to their bodies with the empirical precision of long experience. And they fed families and communities through conditions that required the food to be reliable, nutritious, and reproducible from the simplest possible ingredients. The mortar and pestle that pounded the egusi, the three-stone fire that cooked the jollof, the hands that wrapped the moin moin in leaves and lowered it into the steam. These are not the instruments of a primitive cuisine. They are the instruments of one of the oldest and most sophisticated food cultures on Earth, a culture that produced beauty and sustenance from constraint for thousands of years, that crossed an ocean in the worst possible circumstances and continued feeding people on the other side, that is still feeding people today. This food belongs to everyone who eats it. It belongs most to the people whose ancestors made it survive. Make it, eat it, know what it cost to get here.